YouTube these days, and we're live streaming on YouTube. And so we'll just leave COVID out, because the one person I had who talked strong, gave strong opinions on COVID, he was immediately taken down. Immediately. It was just breathtaking, the speed with which they got there. So,
did he say a lot?
Don't say anything. Don't even ask what he said. I'm just saying we will not talk about COVID today.
Because you're recording now. Okay.
Yes. Anyhow, Nicholas, it is good to finally meet you. And Ken, this is Nicholas Landholdt. Nicholas Landholdt, Kenn Gividen, and Ken and I have been doing podcasts on and off for about, what, 4 years? 5 years?
At least, maybe longer.
Since 16 or 17, because it was, we first started talking when the monuments started coming down here in the South.
Well, I did I started my radio show, my talk radio show back in February of 2017. So I'm coming up.
I'm kind of surprised that you two have never met. So that's one reason I wanted to introduce you. Just tell us a little bit more. Tell us what you were telling me about your background, because you've got a fascinating background. You were in the Navy.
Right. Well, I grew up, born and raised in San Antonio, Texas, half a block from the Catholic school that I ended up going to for 8 years, and then went to public school for the next 4 years and graduated in 73, and got interested via my father in joining the military. So, but at the time I was not, when you're not in the military and you want to go to officer school, you have to take a test. So I couldn't take the test. I couldn't pass the test. So I ended up going ahead and going to college, went to the junior college in San Antonio, and then finished up in Austin and graduated in 77. About the time anybody remembers Earl Campbell, the Heisman Trophy winner and a professional football player. He was playing at Texas about the time I was there. So I finished up in 77 and went ahead and enlisted anyway in the Navy in 78 and spent 10 years doing what is called EOD, Explosive Ordnance Disposal, which entailed the Navy being a diving officer as well. So that was kind of fun. But when I got in 78, when you're in the Navy, and if you have a degree, which I did, then you actually go through a series of interviews with people to get to officer candidate school. And that's what I did, and I got accepted. And so my enlisted days were short-lived, but I went to Newport, Rhode Island, where the officer candidate school for the Navy is. That's actually where I met my future wife. So, God had plans already in place. And so I finished up, was commissioned as an ensign in November of, now that I think about it, in November of 1979. So we're talking, this month would have been, if I was still in the Navy, would have been what, 40? Yeah, over 40 years. But so I got married in 81, and we've got 3 boys, grown, and she got out of the Navy. Well, that's another story, but there's no way she should have been in the officer candidate school. But when she became expectant with son Nicholas Jr., she immediately applied to get out of the Navy, and so she's been a great wife and mother ever since. And we've been married 40 years.
I'm kind of curious, what do you think of the state of the military currently, having been
well, they I don't maybe some of the viewers here have read the book Pawns in the Game by Commander Guy Carr, a Canadian. And I read that book and his other book, Red Fog Over America. Excellent books. But the military is just pawns for the global agenda. And I really didn't, I kind of apologize. People around Veterans Day, they always
Maybe some of the viewers here have read
they say, thank you for your service. And it's almost like, yeah, I usually just say, you're welcome. But typically, and I've posted this on Facebook, I kind of apologize for serving, because I didn't serve to protect and defend the country. I served the global agenda, but I didn't know that. I was pretty ignorant all through the 10 and a half years I was in the Navy. And I actually got out to go work for a priest up in Canada on a religious issue, an event that happened in 1917, which kind of changed my life. And so it wasn't, but it was while I was immediately out of the Navy, I became educated about the global agenda. My parents were not really political activists. I mean, they voted Republican. And so, I didn't know anything about for example, USS Liberty, the attack by the Israelis in June of 1967. I knew nothing of those kind of things. So
is this the book? Is this the right book we're talking about?
Exactly. That and his other book, Pawns in the Game. And I think you can find both of them in a PDF form, free online. But I promote all kinds of books. I'm kind of a guy that there's a quote that I use. My job is to inform, not convince. So I don't spend a lot of time debating. Not that would be even a great debater, but I just don't have the time. I mean, because the educated population is so small, my time is not filled by trying to educate people and bring them over to my side. My job is to try to find the other people who know what I know, and to unite and to get back a situation, which we'll get into, I guess, regarding the state militias. But that, to answer your question, Ken, basically the military is a police state, or part of the police state, and they're used by the globalists to attain their agenda, which for Bible believing Christians is, one world government, one world religion, etc. And what I want to do is, I'm 66 years old, and what I want to do is try to stop that and get back at least Texas into a situation to where we have our state militia, which would entail probably about 5 million members.
Wow. What are the prospects of that actually happening? And I don't mean to hijack your show, Charles. I'm just curious.
Hey, no, not at all. I invited you, and I just want to introduce. This has been one of the most interesting things. Can you all see this? I just saved it on my computer. But can you all see this picture?
The pawns in the game.
Yep.
No.
Yes.
Can you see? I guess I need to check this. I was trying to show your icon. What do I have to do here to bring that up? I have to do something different, obviously. Let's see. Let's start sharing again. I want to bring this back. How do I show my own desktop, Ken?
I have no idea.
God. Because what I wanted to show was this very interesting icon that you all are not seeing this at all, you're saying?
No, sir.
Oh, wait, hang on. I've got it now. Can you see it now?
There we go.
This is his Facebook profile. photograph, and it's about as atypical of Texas as any image I can think of. Texas, when I first saw it in a little tiny thumbnail, I thought it was a bishop's mitre, but this is Cristo el Rey Vivo. Is I believe you speak Spanish?
Well, no, but I do know that the Cristeros, their rallying cry was "Viva Cristo Rey," which is "Long live Christ the King."
Right. Well, so I mean, you are identifying with I mean, that's one politically positive thing for you in Texas if you try to appeal to the Hispanic community. Christ the King is a holiday in the I don't think Kenn is part of a church. What's your denomination, Kenn?
Nothing.
Nothing? No, you're a non-denominational Christian. Okay.
My history is Baptist, but currently you would say that I'm a non-believer.
But you don't have a liturgic, the Baptists don't have a liturgical calendar, right?
They do not, no.
Okay. Christ the King is coming up. It's in the Episcopal Church, Christ the King is the last Sunday of the church year before Advent, before the season, basically the 4 Sundays before Christmas. And it was apparently invented, as I understand it, in the Catholic Church in the 1920s. Am I correct, Nicholas? That it had not been part of the Catholic Church year before then.
No, it's been around for quite some time.
Really?
I could grab my missal and read a little bit about it, but yeah, it's been around for a while. This year it was on October 31st, and I got up to grab my liturgical calendar because first Sunday of Advent is coming up the Sunday after Thanksgiving, so November 28th is the first Sunday.
Here's this. There's so much I think when I look at this image. The only crown that I associate Jesus is wearing during his lifetime is the crown of thorns.
Right.
That's basically my image of Christ's crown. This is a very elaborate royal crown. I'm not sure exactly which. It's certainly not based on the crown of England. It might be based on the crown of Austria. I think it probably is based on the Habsburg crown of Austria. But you can correct me if I'm wrong.
I've had people say that this is not Christ the King, but it's some kind of either a sun god or some kind of a Constantine or that era type of picture. And I don't get into that. This is what I associate with Christ the King. And so I just kind of ignore that.
Okay, but that was just where I was going to start on this. The face and physiognomy and hair of Christ, if you strip away the royal robes, that's the way I grew up thinking of Christ.
Okay.
How about you, Kenn?
My image of Jesus is basically formed by flannel graph. Remember flannel graph, where they take those images and stick them on a board? I don't know if you guys experienced that or not, but they had set images of Jesus, and typically he looked like a guy with long hair and a beard wearing a robe and sandals. He always had to have sandals. But, I find it interesting anytime you see an image, obviously paintings, that is supposed to be Jesus. Somehow you always recognize him to be Jesus, even though some of those images look very, very different. If you were to walk into a Christian bookstore, if there were any of them left, they have pictures of Jesus, some artist, whatever his conception was, and they look like different people, but somehow you know all of them are Jesus. And I always thought that was an interesting psychological phenomenon. So you look at this guy, and probably Jesus looked nothing like this, but somehow you just know. You just know this is who that's supposed to be. Well, you know, the crown and the hand gesture probably is a good clue, but still, if it weren't for those things that are added, you'd know that's supposed to be Jesus. I don't know if it's a long hair, the beard, or what, but you just know.
Well, and then Italy, in Turin, Italy, you have what's called the Shroud of Turin, which is, many Catholics believe, which, and myself included, that is the shroud that Jesus was wrapped in after he was crucified. And when he rose from the dead, there was this bright, light that put this image, which is basically a photographic negative, onto this cloth. And of course, they've done all kinds of tests and what have you. But that particular picture, or in this case, I guess, Christ, kind of gives you a good.
We lost you. Hang on. Are you going to come back?
5 wounds, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, he's just buffering. We lost a little bit. So
Okay.
whatever you said at the end there, we missed it.
The question I really wanted to address to both of you was, in this picture, Christ could conceivably be one of our relatives.
Right.
And that's highly controversial these days. The portrayal of Jesus Christ as a Northwestern European.
Right.
He looks at very least Western European, at very least European. There's no way, he does not look at all Semitic here. And how does that play into the modern dialogue of Christianity?
Well, I'm aware of a lot of blacks who think or believe that and claim that he was dark skinned, that Jesus Christ is dark skinned. I don't think that's the message that we need to be putting out. The message is, at least for me, is it's not a matter of race. It's a matter of, are you a Christian or are you not? Are you a believer or are you not? I mean, I know Christians that claim to be Christians, but don't believe in the Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, 3 persons and one God, 3 persons and one God. So there is so many, and Charles, you and I were talking earlier about Martin Luther. I guess we can somewhat thank Luther for all of these various opinions of what a Christian is. So in my view, getting back to the Texit issue, is to establish a Christian state that, it's not that everyone will be forced to be a Christian, but that, Christianity is the state religion. And that's how it was soon, pretty much around 1787, when the U.S. Constitution was at least ratified, or at least was written, September 17th, which actually happens to be my birthday, is called in the U.S. kind of called Constitution Day. I look at it as the feast of the Stigmata of St. Francis of Assisi, because that's the feast that we celebrate on September 17th. But Constitution Day, 1787, is, the way I kind of phrase it, is the globalists of that day. They threw out the Articles of Confederation, which is what I prefer, or would have preferred, because that pretty much gave states their power and their sovereignty against a encompassing, or what has become an encompassing, federal government. the globalists of 1787 got rid of the Articles of Confederation and came up with the U.S. Constitution. And now you got the globalists of today, like Soros and others, and even conservatives, Christian conservatives like Michael Ferris, who favor an Article 5 convention. And they try to convince you that no, we're not changing the Constitution. We're not throwing out the Constitution. We're just going to focus on one area. Well, I think that's a big fat lie. And there's a lot of information out there regarding an Article 5 convention or a constitutional convention, what I like to call the con. And so that's another reason for Texas to become independent, so that we don't have to mess with these kind of people, the federal government, Washington, D.C., and the global agenda, and with the state militia numbering at least 5 million, because a public state militia is compulsory service. So unless you're some kind of conscientious objector, and you could still serve in the militia, just not in a combatant capacity, then you're going to be a member. And if you don't want to defend the state of Texas or the Republic of Texas, then so long. We're not keeping you here, but we also don't want you here. So you're going to have to move to another state.
I mean, okay, there is a Texit party, right?
I believe about a year ago. Gosh, what is his name? I forget offhand. I told him that he should run he ran against John Cornyn in 2018, I think it was. The Texas senator, U.S. senator from Texas.
John Cornyn.
Who's another traitor, just like Ted Cruz. And I told this guy, Dwayne Stovall, I believe is his name. I told him to run as a libertarian because, Dwayne's conservative and he might not have gotten the nomination, but a true conservative who's trying to run as a Republican is not going to get past the primary. And I've been involved with Jim Condit Jr. out of Cincinnati, Ohio, since 1990.
Who's that?
Jim Condit Jr.
Okay, I don't know. I don't know anything about him. Do you, Ken?
I have no idea who that is.
Okay. Well, I know Larry Beecraft knows Jim well. And Jim's been doing this longer than I have. But Jim's another Catholic who has been involved in politics since the late 70s. And but in 1990, I met Jim for the first time, and so became aware of his efforts, his movement to expose the computer vote fraud, the control of elections through computers by three main companies. And so I'm well aware that a conservative like Dwayne Stovall would never get past the Republican primary, which is coming up in March. So had he run as a libertarian or as an independent, which is what I look to try to do as a running for governor, then you're going to be able to campaign all the way to the election. So, you're not going to get your legs cut out from under you in March. And that's what I wanted to, that's what I tried to do in 2016 when I ran for Congress here in the 11th District of Texas, which encompasses about 29 counties. I ran against Mike Conaway, another globalist traitor for Texas. And Mike Conaway was elected in 2006. He was a good old boy. Worked for George Bush as a CPA, I believe, and so he was up for re-election, as every 2 years as normal. And the Democrats were not running anybody. And as I said, I contacted the Libertarian Party of Texas. I told them what I wanted to do. I told them I was pro-life, pro-family, which would have gotten, a lot of Republican conservatives who might have been on to Mike Conaway and his agenda. I might have gotten a lot of votes that way. But they said, I was told actually that, oh, well, that's okay. We're actually more conservative than the National Libertarian Party. And I said, well, that's cool. Just so you know where I am up front. And, but I got really no help from them. I did not have a campaign manager. I did not even open a bank account. And I still, just by having my name on the ballot as a libertarian, I still got over 23,000 votes here in West Texas. And
which district did you say that was?
11.
Okay.
And in fact, basically the western half of Texas is encompassed by 5 districts. And there were 5 libertarians, myself included, who ran for Congress, the U.S. House of Reps. And we totaled, my 23,000 plus the other 4 candidates, we totaled over 80. Are we still there? Okay. We
Yes,
totaled over.
Now, I just was going to ask you, this is not you then. You are
Right.
not part of the Texas National Movement.
No,
Texas National Movement.
I've talked with them, and I'll get into that here in a second if you want. But we got over 80,000 votes in West Texas for those 5 libertarian candidates. That is a hell of a lot of, that's a great foundation to me for building a party. And but the Libertarian Party of Texas seemed uninterested in jumping on that. And so it was frustrating. But in any case, I learned my lesson not to run a campaign by myself, which I really didn't do anything. As I said, I had no bank account, so I couldn't not even run ads. But my strategy, which would be used as governor, even though it is a state race, not a federal race. But there is a little known law called the Reasonable Access Law. Again, Jim Condit turned me on to this. This Reasonable Access Law requires FCC licensed stations to run the ads of federal candidates. So had I been able to, say, raise just $100,000 in 2016, I could have started to run ads about Mike. And these ads, they don't even need to be political. They can be on whatever topic you want. And that's what Jim does in Cincinnati. He runs every 2 years. He talks about Judeo-Masonry, the Catholic Church, who's running the international bankers, all of that kind of stuff. So it does, that ad does not need to be political in nature. So
is this the district you're talking about?
yes, it is. Yeah.
East on from San Angelo to Odessa.
Right. Yeah.
Have you checked to see how many states in the union this is bigger than?
No.
Kind of interesting. I'm pretty sure it's bigger than either Rhode Island or Delaware or Connecticut.
Delaware, right? Sure. And
interesting concept.
A quick story here. When I tried to run again in 2018. Now I had nobody run against me in 2016, so that's how I got the nomination. In 2018, once the Libertarian Party of Texas and it was just a certain faction within the party. Once they, determined that they didn't like me, then they actually ran a candidate against me in 2018 who lived in San Antonio. And, You do not need to live in the district that you're running
You just need to live in the same state.
in Texas, correct?
Yeah.
So this gentleman, and gosh, I forget his name offhand. He's running as a Green Party candidate, Libertarian Party, Republican. So they threw him up against me, and they had the votes at the district convention to beat me, or at least to nominate this guy as the guy. Now he had this candidate actually.
August Pfluger right now.
That is the current. Yeah, Mike Conaway. He retired in 2020, and August Pfluger is the Republican who was nominated and then won the election in November. So he's, again, he's none of these Republicans, none of these Democrats know anything as far as I can tell.
I'm just curious about his name. Is he related to the fact that's a very unusual name even for Texas? Is he related to the founders of Pflugerville?
Pflugerville? Could be. I haven't done any real research on the gentleman.
I was going to ask you. I mean, Kenn and I are both very interested in questions of race and racial identity. And your name is German, obviously. Are you from I forget the name of the prince who came from Germany and settled New Braunfels and brought a huge German population to Texas? Are you descended from that 1840s colonization?
Probably not. My grandfather, I believe, Conrad Landholdt, is and my mother's side, I'm Irish, so I'm German Irish. I think he was the first one over here. I haven't done much family ancestry background. I know there's somebody else in my family who has done that. But yeah, I was about 30 miles from New Braunfels growing up in San Antonio, and we had cousins in Austin. So occasionally we would drive through New Braunfels and San Marcos in order to get to Austin. And it seemed like forever to get there. Nowadays, San Antonio and Austin are almost connected. It's almost like a Dallas-Fort Worth metroplex. And so, you don't go any time without seeing something happening on that I-35 trek from San Antonio north to Austin. But I do, what I was going to say about Austin Pfluger is the fact that I know that he knows nothing about the Texas State Militia. And I, in fact, challenge, I actually probably confront all of the congressmen, the 535 congressmen. They do not want to give power back to we the people, because if they did, then they would be talking about, like I am talking about, restoring the constitutional militia.
Ken, I've never heard your opinions on the militia. Where do you stand on militia and National Guard issues?
I'm really not very well versed in what it's all about, other than I know the people who like to start up these impromptu militias and declare themselves a militia. Some of them are nuts. Some of them have good intentions. Some of them are know what they're doing. But aside from that, just about anybody could say, I'm forming a militia, and they have this little group. So I don't know.
And I always distinguish between what I'm advocating, which is the public state militia, versus the private militias. And the media started to have a heyday back in the 90s when you had the Militia of Montana, which was a private militia group. That's when the media started to demonize the word militia. And, they've done it ever since. So I'm quick to tell people that I am not promoting private militias, because a constitutional militia is a state a government function militia, not private.
When we were
So-
talking earlier, you made this very interesting comment that if George Wallace had understood the Constitution, he would have formed a constitutional militia in Alabama.
Well, he would have revitalized or restored the Alabama state militia.
And how could
That's-
how could a governor do that in the modern?
Well, and it varies from state to state. Now, Alabama, maybe it would have required the state legislature to do that. But a colleague, I guess, a militia advocate of mine, Daniel Vincent McGonigal, and I interviewed him on my talk radio show. He's done some research and found that the governor of Texas has the authority to restore the Texas militia. So he would not need to go through the state legislature. So that's something that I would bring out in a campaign. And again, this campaign is hinges on finding a campaign manager, which I've been trying to do since 2014, when I first started to think about running for governor, because I'm willing to. I've already got a target on my back regarding the IRS, and I'm not influential enough yet, God willing, to have a target on my back regarding the Judaics and Judeo-Masonry. But what was I saying? The campaign manager is the guy who's going to run the campaign. I mean, obviously he's got to be pro Texit, and he's got to be. It would be nice if he's, a traditional Catholic, but and male. But if I could find a female who has the experience and the guts to, because it would be a very confrontational, controversial campaign. We would be butting heads with the media all the time, but that's how you get attention, is to get the media, force the media somehow. And that's what I could do with these ads.
But you don't feel that you'd have the support of the current Texas nationalist movement?
Oh, I may, but they seem to be, and I know Daniel Miller, the president of Texas National Movement, he's running for lieutenant governor, but he's running as a Republican. So I already can tell that he's not going to make it past March. Whereas if he ran as an independent, it's very difficult running as an independent. I think you have to have 50,000 some odd signatures. That's another thing that Austin has done, is to make it difficult for other parties other than Democrats and Republicans to get on the ballot. But Daniel Miller, I mean, if he ran as an independent, he could run all the way through November. But no, I would certainly ask for their endorsement.
The Libertarians didn't have ballot recognition until sometime, it was in the 80s or something. And I remember I was asking you about John Rowland. I know he was part of the group that got the Libertarians on the ballot.
Okay.
What would it take to get the Texit party on the ballot? Have you worked with those people at all?
No, I haven't spoken. Dwayne Stovall, as I said, founded the Texit party, and but I haven't spoken to them as to how they are going about getting ballot access. As I said, the Libertarian Party of Texas had it in 2016. They had it in 2018. I mean, basically, and I think this is still the case, you have to have a candidate who garners 5%, is it, of a state-run race in order for the party to.
And
in Indiana, I think the requirement is 5% of the Secretary of State's race. That will get you ballot access. So if you want to defeat the Libertarian Party, what you do is you run a bogus party. opposed to them, and the Republicans could knock the Libertarians out of the race, but they're not doing it, so I guess they're happy with it. I don't know.
Well, I've thought about approaching the Democrats who would like to turn the state from red to blue to have them help me because I'm considered a conservative, pro-family, pro-life, etc.
Yeah, you got to be careful because there are some legal implications, and there are some laws that do not allow you to do that.
To do
Oh,
what?
well, as I say,
To do what, Ken? I sort of lost you there.
Well, working for two parties to work together against a third party, whichever combination, there are laws established that disallow that. So libertarians can't team up with Republicans or Democrats officially. I mean, they do it, kind of a nod and wink, but you got to be very careful when you.
Yeah, you've got super PACs and those kind of things.
Yeah, there's a way to get around it, but
like you say,
still got to be careful.
Wink and a nod. And this is why I would need an experienced campaign manager who knows all of these, the ins and outs of running a campaign. Because my effort should be focused on the message, which, as they say, is going to be controversial. And I'm willing to do that, but I need somebody who is basically going to use me. Let's try to get this message out there, the message of Texas independence out there.
Well, I mean, the interesting thing, of course, is that Texas was independent at one point. This is sort of an alternative history map. Can you all both see this?
Yes.
This shape of Texas never existed, did it?
Well, it existed briefly.
Well, no, it literally never existed because the Republic of Texas didn't actually control the Nueces area. It didn't actually control West Texas, and it certainly didn't control part of Colorado. This includes the Texas Panhandle, New Mexico, Colorado, Kansas, way up. I think that would be what's now Wyoming, right? The northern edge of there. And so it's just kind of interesting. This was I believe this was Mirabeau Bonaparte Lamar's dream of Texas.
I couldn't answer you one way or the other that, except to say
my understanding is that the de facto border of the Republic of Texas was the Nueces River, not the Rio Grande. They claimed the Rio Grande. That was ultimately part of the pretext for starting the Mexican-American War, other than just not recognizing Texas at all. And then, of course, the Republic of California existed for a few weeks or something. It wasn't very long-lived, but what is your vision for Texas? I mean, if Texas were to be an independent country, would you try to restore the I almost called it Lamarckian, but that's the wrong word, Lamarian vision of Texas? I mean, would you try to annex so many Texans, including my family, like treated Santa Fe and Taos as vacation houses and for Texans, and and yet the Nueces area, the area of South Texas, has always been kind of a no man's land. You've got the King's Ranch down there, and basically the whole border has always been kind of de facto part of Mexico.
Well, I would, I mean, if you're kind of asking would I like to go back to the original borders, I would say no, that's not the vision. I mean, I would accept the current borders. My thing is to reestablish, restore the Texas State Militia and secure the borders not only the southern border, but the eastern, western, and northern borders as well. And to keep all, in fact, I would freeze all immigration, obviously illegal, but even the legal, I would freeze it for at least 5 years, maybe 10.
I don't know if y'all noticed it while I had it up, but August Pfluger had this link on his website. Can you see this?
That's this DeWilly thing?
Diwali. Yeah, I mean,
No, I don't know. That's the first I've heard of it.
well, I mean, you were saying that most Republicans are globalists. This seems like a very globalist agenda to make Diwali a federal holiday.
Well, it's all of these congressmen are all trying to get reelected, so they try to please everybody. Well, I don't know how many.
How many Hindus are there in the 11th district?
Yeah, right, exactly.
And how many Hindus are there in Columbus, Georgia? Not Columbus, Georgia, Columbus, Indiana?
There are some, because you see them walking around with their turbans. Now, Columbus, Indiana is the headquarters of Cummins Engine Company. And if you drive by Cummins headquarters, downtown Columbus, you see lots and lots of brown people. These are engineers that they have brought in from primarily from India. But occasionally you'll see somebody who is, manifestly a Hindu. But that's the global corporate mindset, is to colonize. Columbus is, when I moved here 40 some years ago, it was basically all white. And our congressional district, which I think is the third, Greg Pence's district, it is like 97% white. And they are actively, intentionally trying to shift that culture, because brown people tend to vote blue. That's just the way it is. Now, the city council, the Democrats took over by literally one vote. The council was split, and they had one seat up for grabs, and there was a black candidate that won that seat by one vote margin. And so, one immigrant, I don't know if it was a Hindu or Mexican or who it was, no, how would you know? But that's why they do what they do. They don't need 100%. They need just barely 51% or over 50%. But to answer your question, I don't really know. I just know they're here. South Indianapolis, they have, what do you call their house of worship? I don't know. But there's a community up there, which when I lived in Greenwood, which is Indianapolis South, it was just totally white, very conservative. But they're I can't remember what you call their church, but wasn't too long ago, a few years ago, they actually had like a riot in their church, which I thought was kind of strange. But that made the news. But now you go out to eat up there, and it's just the demographics have shifted, and that's what we're seeing across the state, across the country.
Now, according to that article on Pfluger's site, the Hindu population, I guess, in America is 0.5%. I just
that's still 6 to 7 million Hindus. That's a lot of Hindus if you think about it.
67 out of 300.
6 to 7, no, 6 or 7 million Hindus.
6 or 7. Okay.
6 or 7. I mean, that the concept of 6 or 7 million Hindus in the United States is sort of astounding to me. That's a lot of Hindus, don't you think? I mean, I believe it's like twice the population of Louisiana.
Well, and my take is always, since I don't know if either of y'all follow or know about Brother Nathaniel, who was
of course,
Judaic who converted to Orthodox Christianity. He's been banned by Facebook and YouTube. He he states quite plainly who owns the media. So I don't know how much stock we can put in any stats that the media has been putting out for decades.
Well,
But be that as it may, I don't understand a candidate kowtowing to a fraction of a population in their state to try to get their vote. I certainly wouldn't do it, and I won't do it, and I'm not going to do it. Again, contingent on the campaign manager.
This is just one of these amazing thoughts. Ken, do you know what the population of Indiana is?
No, but I can find out.
I just looked it up.
I'm guessing 6 million. I don't know.
According to populationu.com, it is 6.8 million. So the population of Indiana is exactly parallel to the alleged Hindu population of the United States. So there are as many Indianans as there are Hindus, and some of those Indianans are Hindus. And you know,
we are Hoosiers. We are not Indianians.
Sorry.
Common mistake. I don't know why they call us Hoosiers, but that's what they do. So.
Well, I mean, here's what I'm thinking. If any state wanted to separate, I mean, the last time I was in Dallas was for my mother's funeral, and it was a very tragic and horrible experience in my life, naturally. But this is 6 years ago. 6 years ago to the minute, actually. And the thing that horrified me most about near North Dallas, and I'm talking about, do you know Dallas at all, either one of you?
No.
Oh, I know it's big, and they have the Cowboys.
Okay, well, anyhow,
Dallas
downtown Dallas, the original core of Dallas is basically just called downtown Dallas. There's very few people actually live in the original core of the city of Dallas. It's just a skyscraper collection of skyscrapers, basically. The near north is sort of the oldest suburbs of Dallas, and they are still it's kind of hilarious. There's a North Dallas High School that's like the furthest south in inhabited Dallas, and then you get Highland Park and University Park by SMU. But near north, between Highland Park and downtown, is basically like Los Angeles. It is a huge Iranian population mixed with Asian, mixed with Mexican. Those are the three dominant groups that I saw there, anyhow. White folks, we're like aliens. I mean, I went by to, the church where actually I was a choir boy. Hard to picture me as a choir boy, but I was at one stage. And that's the Church of the Incarnation on North Central Expressway. And you walk out from this incredibly conservative, waspy congregation. It's one of the most conservative Episcopal churches left in the country. And you walk out from this enclave, and you hear people speaking Farsi on the streets of Dallas. And so, Governor Landholdt, what is your approach to the diversity of the state? Do you want to preserve it? I mean, Diwali is one thing. How about Ramadan? How about Zoroastrian festivals that I've never heard of? I mean, how about Shiite festival? I mean, do we celebrate the Ayatollah's birthday in Texas? Because the Ayatollah, or for that matter, I guess a lot of these people who are in Texas, like a lot of the people who are in Los Angeles, They are Iranians who left Iran because of the fall of the Shah. So do we celebrate the pretenders to the Shah's birthday? Or are most of these folks Iranian Jews? I mean, Dallas used to be Dallas used to be basically the capital of the John Birch Society. I mean,
Really?
it was an incredibly conservative place. Everybody, the most suspicious thing about John F. Kennedy's death in Dallas in 1963 is that half the population of Dallas wished him dead.
Well, I'm not sure why that would be. I do know that Michael Hoffman, and when you get to know him better, know his research better, will show that the occult, Masonic, behind the scenes nature of the JFK's assassination. But as far as diversity, if I was able to, I say this is a situation that's not about me, it's about Texians, are able to reestablish this as a Christian state. You would not, these people, they'd be free to worship their Diwali or Juneteenth or whatever holidays, but it's not going to be a Christian holiday. It's not going to be a public holiday in Texas. That would be for sure.
In the original Republic of Texas, I can't remember off the top of my head, I should know this, but there was a freedom of religion clause in the Constitution, right?
That's what I understand, yeah, and I probably need to, obviously look into that.
Was there, I mean, in your Texas, would there be such a clause, and would there be a religious test clause? You said you wanted the government of Texas to be Christian, so
right, yes.
Would you instate a religious test for office or voting, and if so, what would it be?
I would again reestablish Christianity as the state religion in Texas. So, and if the federal government has a problem, it's like the abortion thing. The federal government is coming after Texas for passing this bill recently regarding no abortions after the baby's heartbeat can be determined, which is typically around 6 weeks. If the federal government has a problem with it, then okay, let's go. But obviously, I'm not going to. My whole purpose of running for governor is to reestablish the state militia, so that we can defend ourselves against the federal government and anybody else who would like to bring about insurrections or invade Texas.
Ken, does this make Nicholas Landholdt almost unique in our experience?
Well, yeah, everyone is unique. There's 8 billion people on the planet. No two of us think the same thing all the time. So
I'm saying that you and I talk to a lot of radical people. Is it possible that Nicholas Landholdt is the first person that we've talked to who wants to reestablish a Christian state inside North America?
I cannot think of anyone else who has said that. I'm thinking some others may believe it, they just haven't talked about it. But yeah, it's kind of unique. My concern is that we become so defined in what we think needs to be done and what is the correct path to take, that we wind up walking totally alone. There's nobody with us. And that's just human nature. That's why Christian churches have so many different denominations. And churches have splits all the time. You get two people together, they disagree, they go their own ways. And there has to be some form of consensus to pull off anything. And how you do that without compromise, I'm not sure you can, but there was a lot of give and take with the founding of the United States. Finally, they managed to get it done. But I don't think you can. People talk about having a white republic. Well, or white nation may not be a republic. They want a white nation, but they can't get along with each other. It's how they're going to form a nation. And I find that true across the board. What it generally takes to get something like this done, speaking of Texit, is it takes a very strong personality, somebody who is head of the movement that everybody follows. Now, just to make an analogy here, you will notice that there are a number of mega churches in the United States. One of them is in Texas. I can't remember the name of it. But, there's First Baptist in Dallas is one, Criswell, very dynamic, charismatic personality. Joel Osteen, very dynamic personality. I think his dad was a genius.
Guy in Houston.
Yeah, down in Houston. And every mega church in existence has one thing in common. They have a charismatic pastor. They have a highly intelligent, charismatic pastor. If for a movement to succeed, I think that is the key that has to be in place, because you're not going to get people to get together and do anything by consensus without that strong leadership. Just not going to happen, even though it should happen and could happen, but probably won't. Those are my thoughts on that.
Well, and I certainly don't consider myself a charismatic personality, which is why I would focus on basically having a staff who shares the vision of a Christian state, and how do we go about getting Christians in Texas to unite behind that vision, when, as you say, Ken, so many Christians can't even get along themselves because they don't know what, they don't define Christianity. So not that I would, but I mean, you basically, I believe, would have to believe in the Trinity. And, and what you can prove with non-Catholics, they're so hung up on sola scriptura that if it's not in scripture, then, which sola scriptura itself is not even in the scriptures.
Well, when I was raised a Baptist, I was taught that Catholics were a cult. That
yes.
To be a Catholic was not to be a Christian. They're just not the same.
Exactly.
So you want to have a Christian nation, then you can't be a Catholic, according to them. So how are you going to get that done?
Right.
I'm not saying it can't be, but
there's 5 centuries of propaganda that has to be overcome regarding to try to establish a Christian state. But and like I say, I'm not we're not imprisoning anybody, but if somebody in the state doesn't like living in a Christian state, they are free to leave. We're not going to force them out, but maybe they go find their own. I'm in league with the Yes Cal Exit movement with Marcus Reese Evans. Do you know Marcus Evans, Charles?
No, I don't.
Okay, well, he heads up the Cal Exit movement, which is one of several California secession movements, but it's probably, from what I can tell, it's probably the most noticeable. And so he's trying to get the support of all of the red states to support and advocate for California secession. So I'm sort of the de facto Texas representative. And I've been interviewed by Marcus, and I've interviewed him on their movement. And we both support what he calls the national divorce, the end of the union, the so-called perfect union of the U.S. And so, but he's a self-admitted liberal and leftist, And so, we've kind of kidded each other by saying, well, you send us your conservative Christians, and we'll send you all the LGBTQRS types back to California. But as I say, with being known as the militia guy, and that was a label that came from a libertarian when I ran in 2016, because I was pushing the militia so much, he just started to refer to me as the militia guy. That's why I say we have to have, the state has to have its militia restored in order to defend ourselves. And they said, well, how are you going to, defend yourself against the U.S. Army? Well, a state militia is going to have the same armament as the U.S. military and the National Guard does. So
maybe it's the National Guard, but I mean, how will you achieve? How would you achieve a takeover? I mean, just on a budget, for instance, how would you separate the budgets of Texas or California from the United States?
Well, I mean, those are good questions that I'm sure either.
Well, I mean, that was actually Abraham Lincoln, distant cousin of mine's big question in 1861 was if he gives up 1/3 of the tax producing country, well, actually more like half of the tax producing country, 1/3 of the geographic country, how would the United States operate? And that was when the federal government was much smaller than it is now.
Sure.
A friend of mine up in Montana was, for about 12 years, he was in the state Senate, and I visited him several times there. And I had a cousin who was in the state legislature in Texas. And you know what what Texas and Montana legislators do when they come into their non-permanent temporary sessions?
What?
They sit down and they try to decide what to do with federal revenue sharing money.
Right.
Every penny that comes in from Texas taxes or Montana taxes, every penny is already spent. So the only thing the legislature really has to do is either spend federal revenue sharing money, or if they don't do that, then they have to raise taxes or borrow money with state bonds. Would that match your impression of Indiana, Ken?
Well, to some degree, the big problem we have in Indiana, this is just my opinion, is one of the biggest budget items, not necessarily on the state level, but in government in general, are school corporations. Often their budget dwarfs metropolitan areas or counties. I mean, they spend and take in a ton of money. And the way they get their money is they will sell bonds. And why do they do that? Well, they want to build school buildings, sometimes millions, some cases hundreds of millions of dollars, to improve the facilities. And what they're really doing, in my opinion, is they're locking into position the teachers' unions and the teachers' jobs, because, if a school corporation sells a bond, issues a bond for, 30 years or whatever they are, well, you're bound to that for 30 years. That is job security for the teachers, and that is job security for the teachers' unions. And in my opinion, that's just a way to fleece the public. And the argument is, well, we need to improve education, which to my knowledge, there's not an iota of data research that says a big, beautiful building improves the quality of education. I mean, if they want to have nice buildings, nice facilities, obviously we would be for that. But the point that I guess I'm making is it seems to be ubiquitous. I mean, it's just everywhere. Corruption is a part of human nature. whether it's state, local, school board, federal, whatever. Everybody's out to get the biggest dollar they can. Now, when Ron Paul was congressman, in fact, is he still congressman? I don't even know.
No, no.
Okay. When he was
retired a few
congressman,
years
he
ago.
was vehemently opposed to the way that the federal government doled out money. But he said still, he was kind of in a position where he had to get his fair share. He didn't like it, but, you know, if they're passing it out, you know, he's going to be there to get it. That's just the way our minds think. You know, I mean, what's he going to do? Say, no, I don't want this money. I know there have been Congress people who have done that. They just refuse to, you know, negotiate, play the political game, you know, hold their vote until they get what they want and whatever. But yeah, I think it's true in virtually every state legislature. That's how they function. That's how they operate. By the way, I got to go eat dinner at 6:30.
Okay, well, we could adjourn for today, but I want to get us back together because this is really a very interesting conversation we're having. And, you know, it's very different from what Ken and I usually talk about. We usually focus on race issues. And so it's good to sort of diversify and get a different radical perspective. And I hope you don't mind me calling you radical, because you do seem to be going to the root of things.
No offense taken.
Well, Ken, go have dinner, and maybe well, let's just try to get back together again, because I think this is a very interesting conversation we've had, and
I've enjoyed it.
Nicholas, it is good finally to meet you and to understand a little bit more about your iconography. And anyhow, what is the next step for you? Are you going to set up a campaign committee, or what is your goal?
Yeah, I've got a tentative sort of a acting campaign manager. He's a Catholic up in Wisconsin, but he's got his young daughter has health issues. So, but Brad Fassbender is who I'm working with currently. But we need to find a permanent campaign manager who can help us frame the issues of Texit, the issues of militia, the issues of monetary reform, killing the IRS, if I can say that. And
it's not quite as dangerous as the other topic I mentioned that we can't talk about.
Right.
Anyhow.
and so you know, and if it's not in God's plan, then, you know, so be it. You know, I've had these health issues this year. This is a year, you know, almost to forget about. But you know, he gave me the cancer and back pains and what have you, and you know,
But he's
maybe
also
that
you look pretty alive to me. You look like you're reasonably healthy.
Well, I actually lost about 65 pounds. I've gained about 15 of them back. But which is probably good. I was way overweight. But in any case, you know, if it's not in God's plan to, I talk about a God, Guts, and Guns campaign, the 3G. We hear an awful lot about 5G. Well, mine's a 3G, God, Guts, and Guns. We got to repent.
On that note, I know that Ken has to go feed his.
Yes.
And tend to his wife. So anyhow, Ken,
okay.
and
Nice to meet you, Ken.
Good night. Good to meet you, Nicholas. Finally for real. And we will be talking again very soon.
Okay.
Let's do it. Take care.
Book 'em once.
Good night, everybody.